my gym is in the same building as my office, so I literally don't even have to drive anywhere. Um, and which is funny because that was one of the reasons I got the office, was because I'm going to work out every day because it's right there, and then it just didn't happen.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am here with Tim Waggoner, who is the founder of Hearth Homes. And let me just tell you, I was in a coaching group with this guy about I don't even remember when we started the coaching group, but 6 to 9 months ago. And he is just like an absolute firecracker of energy and goal setting and everything. So what we're going to be talking about today is his experience in 10Xing his business, literally, which is flipping homes. He's in real estate, and he is on a mission to flip 100 homes in a year. We're going to talk about how close he is to that goal. But without further ado, Tim, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's a real treat to be here.
So, I think just to kind of set the stage. So, Hearth Homes is a company you started, but in 2023, how many homes did you flip? And was that the first year that you've ever flipped homes?
My first year that I flipped homes was in 2020. I think the Barb's pretty well. The first home that I ever flipped was actually I partnered with Pat and Sarah, which we owned a construction company at the time together, and that was our first flip. Was I did with them. My first, I think 4 or 5 actually were with Pat and Sarah back in 2020 and 2021. Yeah, so
And so
my
you
my
did
first flip was
5
in
homes.
2020. Um, in 2023, I flipped like 4, and then over the course of 2020 and 2021 with Pat and Sarah, I did probably 4 or 5 in those 2 years combined, because we were starting out in construction, kind of figuring out the ropes of everything. And then previously, both of us had worked for on the same crew, a company that flipped homes. So we were doing all the work, and we were like, well, we're doing the work, so we
How
wanted to
much
get
harder
into
can
the
it be
other
to
side of
buy
it.
it?
Exactly. It turns out it's a lot harder, but
But the
but that
payoff
was
is
kind
there.
of exactly, yeah. That was kind of what birthed the idea of us going in together in construction and starting a business. Was our experience working for the company. Shout out to Prime Real Estate Group in Spokane. Melissa Murphy, Justin Jensen, good people. But we started out, Pat and I started out working together as a company, and then we worked together until October of 21, when we kind of he and his wife had different goals. You can see now they've got their deck company that they're doing really well with, and then I wanted to continue flipping homes, and so Hearth Homes originated, like, we started in October of 2021 was when I first got the LLC.
Okay, because then the next part of the story is the part that I think is just freaking awesome, and that is, so you did 4 or 5 homes in 2020, 2021, 23. You did 5 homes, and then 2024, this year, like what what happened, and what was the because as of today, this is we're recording this on August 31st. So how many homes have you completed in 2024?
Completion, I don't have an exact number. I think the ones that we've completed the renovation on is probably in the 30s. I've taken title to 51, and so we currently have currently on our books, we have 26 projects that are either being renovated or being sold. Um, and then yeah, so I guess 51 projects overall, and then I think we've completed and sold probably close to 30
Yeah,
for the
that's
year.
so what to me, I'm like, okay, what was the thing that inspired you to be like, you know what? Let's just go big. And I don't remember what month it was, but I remember in the group you saying I'm going to flip 100 homes in 2024. And what was give me like the background, either like mentally, internally, was it there's some external pressure? What was the thing of like, why not just go big?
It's interesting. I'd never been a part of a group like Man on a Mission before. I'd been in a lot of different networking groups surrounded by good people, but I'd never been in a group of people like Man on a Mission, where everyone was, well, on a mission to better themselves and to um, basically pursue greatness. And I thought that was amazing, and that really inspired me to make a huge change in my life. But I would say the biggest thing that made me, get off my ass basically, was in November 15th. Our first child was born. My wife and I, our first child, and I think that was my biggest motivator, because we'd been married since February, and um, she got pregnant almost right away. But for some reason, just being married and having her, her getting pregnant wasn't really enough to inspire that big of a change. But when we had the baby and I was holding my son, I don't know, it sparked something in me, and um, well, I decided I wanted to take over the world, basically. And so, because I mean, it's like Hannah, she can take care of herself. She's a very capable woman. But then when you have this completely helpless, little child that is going to grow up to, you're going to be the role model. He's going to depend on you throughout most of his childhood, and then he's going to look up to you to be the person that they aspire to be. Um, and then, and then you're going to tell this child to chase their dreams, and then they're going to ask you, "Did you chase yours?" And what are you going to tell them? And so having that kind of realization, because I had always told myself I was going to flip a lot of houses and I was going to do something big. And up to that point, all I had ever really done is maybe done, 3 or 4 a year, and then kept it small because I didn't want to put myself out there, and then done construction because I was a Hearth Homes is a general contractor. We're a general contractor. So I'd always do construction, and then I'd do a couple flips just because, I wanted to be a flipper, but didn't really want to actually take the risk involved with it. And so, yeah, in November, I made the decision to go big. And then it was really the atmosphere of that group that really inspired me to go and double it. Because initially I was going to aim for 50 for the year. And I was like, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's really go all out. and
And
then
so
and then I
100,
decided to aim
nice.
for, yeah.
Yeah, 100, nice round number. And also literally the going from 5, you did like a 20x goal. But the have you I can't remember if we've talked about this. The book 10x is easier than 2x by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
Right.
Have you read that book?
I haven't actually. No, I've heard so much about it, but I have not
Because
read it.
you're living it. Like you might not need to read it because you could explain half the things in the book. But one of the things I think is most powerful is whenever someone, like, let's say you were like, all right, I did 5 last year, I'm going to do twice as much. I'm going to do 10. Like, anybody can double their current output, and it's just more stress, less sleep, more, chaos, but you can do it. But nobody can literally 10 times output whatever they're currently doing. It's impossible. It requires a totally, like, destroying all current beliefs, systems, processes, and saying, all right, if I'm going to go for 10 times what I did, or in your case 20 times what you did, like, I got to figure out a different way. And then the thing that's brilliant is that it immediately is like, all of these options, like 95% of the things on the table are not going to work. If there is a chance in, I was going to say hell or heaven, whichever one, there's a chance
Right.
in hell that I can do this. There's like 3 ways or 4 ways I could possibly achieve this. And that's the clarity that Dan Sullivan talks about, is just basically eliminating all the noise and being like, that's what I'm going for. And that means I need systems, processes, a team, and it just makes everything way more black and white. What would you add to that experience or modify about that, like, core principle of 10x is easier than 2x?
I was actually talking with my brother about this last night. He's kind of he's my right hand in the company and manages most of the projects that we currently have. And I was talking to them about it, and that's what we were agreeing. 10x is easier than 2x because it eliminates all of the options and forces you to basically, I think, become a whole different person. Because like you were saying, the 2x, really all you have to do, like if I wanted to flip 10 houses this year, I could accomplish that just simply by working a lot harder, or by hiring 2 more people or whatever the case may be. But to 10x, it really requires you to completely change the system, and change everything you're doing and honestly become a whole different person yourself in order to accomplish something that is so far above where you currently are. It's yeah, a complete change in who you are and how you see things and how you behave. Um, because I think success in a company really does boil down to the person that leads it, and so I had to completely change my perspective. I think in how I view business and how I view life in order to accomplish something like that. Um, and so yeah, I would say 10x is easier than 2x in some ways. I mean, it's never easy to 10x. Um,
Yeah. Well,
to,
the
to,
thing that I think is like at the end of the day, realistically, you're probably doing like honestly, you individually are going to exert the same amount of energy and potentially less if you do it right. And maybe initially you won't because you're trying to figure things out. But the payoff is 10 times the payoff generally, you know? Um, and so it's like if you're gonna work your ass off, you might as well, do it on something that's really exciting and crazy because
yeah,
it's like
definitely. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
I
something
that's
that
to me is like why
inspires you.
not?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think honestly, for the first 6 months of the year, I was working, from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'd be at the office before 5 and I'd just be working, and my wife didn't see me very much. But after building the system, my wife's out of town, so I have tons of time, but I've been playing golf basically every single day this week. And I'll show up at the office and the team is just kind of doing all of their things, and I don't really have that much to do some days where I'll just go in there and I'll work for a while and then I'm like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
I think the 10x is easier because it forces you to involve a team. You can't do it all yourself, and you have to lean on other people in order to accomplish everything, which in turn does make life easier in a lot of ways.
So I'm also curious. You mentioned you have to become a whole different person. What were the core either internal mental shifts, perspective changes, or just daily habits, or maybe all three of those that you feel like were instrumental in this last 9 months?
I think the biggest one is self belief. Um, I think a lot of people can work really hard, um, but don't ever believe in themselves or give themselves enough credit to actually um, kind of step forward and step out of their comfort zone to do something that they believe in, that they can actually that they think they can accomplish. um, and so I think having that belief in myself that it's possible, because before, I would always have that safeguard of, I can just bring on a construction project, and we'll still have income. Whereas when you start out in flipping, there is no guarantees ever. um, and so I think having that belief, and then also the realization that you can't do it all yourself. You have to bring in people to help you. It's impossible to do it all yourself, and you have to bring in good people that also believe in the vision. Because I think a lot of 2x to 10x is you have to do a lot of vision casting and show others why they should believe in what you're doing, which can be a pretty difficult thing. And I think it takes a while sometimes to understand that and to properly cast that vision. Because I think in order to build something huge, you have to be a visionary, but then you also have to execute on that vision.
So, what is the what is the vision for Hearth Homes that you share with your team or the public?
The vision is 100. I think it's become a little bit of like a catchy, like the 100 homes is this big lofty thing. And to be perfectly honest, I've pared that down a little bit. I think I'll do probably 75 this year instead of 100, because when I was looking at the team, I was like, I can only train up people so fast to project manage and to do all the purchasing and everything. So I wanted to scale back a little bit. So we're doing 75 this year, but I think just that vision alone of we're going to flip 100 homes is, or can be, if cast well, can be a pretty inspiring um, a pretty inspiring goal to chase. And so I think that's really given the team a lot of boost this year because they can see it actually happening. If we were on number 15 for the year, we're like, we're gonna do 100. Like, it's not good. That's not very inspiring.
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
It's delusional. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And what are the personal like daily rituals or routines, working out, diet, any shifts there?
I, to be perfectly honest, and this is something that I've been struggling with this year, is I think I made the mistake, and I'm noticing this towards the end of the year, and I'm making a huge shift. But I feel like my business took such a priority that my personal health kind of took a back seat. Because I've previously to like maybe the last 2 years, I was in the gym every single day. I've ran, you know, 20 different marathons and I was working out every day and ate really well. And I think this year it kind of took a little bit of a backseat, and I'm noticing that. And I'm also noticing that it's really affected my, well, how much my output. Even just from a business perspective, it's really noticing my output because my energy levels can be pretty low. You know, so I'm taking a big shift because who cares if we flip 100 homes, but my health is in the toilet. It doesn't really do any good. So I'm taking a huge shift right now to optimize that and to prioritize it because it's what was that old saying, health without wealth is, or wealth without health is nothing, or I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
what I always
along
remember
those
is
along
a
those lines.
healthy man has many wishes, an unhealthy man has only one.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
The so what does that look like?
For me, I think for me it's going to be getting back into the gym, into my normal old routine. I used to wake up, I wake up really early. I've always been a really early riser. Before 5, 4:30, and I used to go to the gym either very first thing in the morning or when I came home and just went every single day. Which I have no excuse because my gym is in the same building as my office, so I literally don't even have to drive anywhere. Um, and which is funny because that was one of the reasons I got the office, was because I'm going to work out every day because it's right there, and then it just didn't happen. Turns out not having to drive to the gym didn't change very much. Um, but that, and then my wife is really into um, the science behind the, the horrible food situation in America, where basically everything is out to kill you. Um, and so I've really been looking into. I'm sure you're familiar with it because of Matt. The carnivore. I think I tried it for a month and I've never felt that good before. So somewhat of a balanced carnivore. I don't know if I can, if doing 100% carnivore for life is very sustainable. Um, but doing something along those lines where it's just eliminating all processed food, because I will say I feel so much better and there's no brain fog when I'm just eating, basically just meat and veggies, whatever you could hunt down in the wild, and that's your diet.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Dan Martell, who came to speak to the group.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you followed him at all?
I follow him actually very closely.
Have you looked at his nutrition and fitness plan or heard
I
about it?
haven't. I've heard about it, and I noticed that his health took a huge shift like 6 months ago.
Yeah. I was gonna say this is like I'm on day 4 today,
Okay.
so just started and it was I feel like it's just this is why I love podcasting and love just the people that you are connected. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with,
Right.
and it's something I've always believed. And similar, I think this is very similar to what you're saying, but I've had for myself, I have this vision of who I'm going to be at the end of my life. My dad died when he was 56. And so I'm like, okay, I'm 34 right now. Let's say I could die next year. I don't know, next week. I'm not sure. But assuming that I only have 20 years left, which is what my dad would have had at this point, I just like, I'm thinking about that all the time. But if by the grace of God, I'm able to live to be 70 or 80 or 90 or whatever, I don't know how long ago this was, but I was like, I'm going to have a 6-pack when I'm 70. Like I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
I'm gonna that's gonna happen. And I don't like it's just who I want to be is someone that's healthy and fit and can play and do sports and activities and life things with my kids and grandkids. And so anyways, with that idea in mind, then there's the other question of like, okay, so I don't have a six pack right now, so when am I going to get one? It's like, I'm like, maybe after the kids are older or I get more sleep or once the business changes or whatever. And the other thing that I like for me personally was I followed Dan very closely, and I was like, I mean, he's talking about tracking your macros and doing progressive overload training. Like, how hard could that be? I could just look it up and I'll just do the same thing. Like, I don't need to pay for some program. Because it's not cheap, but at the same time, when I was like trying, weighing all this in my head, I was like, okay, so uh, I literally probably had thought about it and been considering it for like 3 months, and finally last like on probably last week, about a week ago, my wife was like, when are you going to just do the plan, just purchase the damn thing and go do
Right.
it? And I was like, first of all, don't tell me what to do, because I was like, I'm not doing it because you told me.
Right.
And then I, thought about it for a couple days, and then I just woke up and was like, this was 4 days ago, or 5 days ago is when I signed up. 4 days ago is when I started, and I was like, I'm just doing it. And I'm like, the new Chris starts now, because why? Like, when else can you change? And the thing that I will tell you that has been most impactful in me, like I already know, like, this is the new version of me, and that's because I'm like, just like you. For the last 6 years of my life, I either go to CrossFit or yoga or swimming or something like 5 days a week without fail. I never miss workouts. I am so disciplined, and I would be pissed off at myself when I'd look in the mirror and see that I still have a dad bod and I keep gaining weight. And so I'm like, just it literally like a frustration of like, this isn't who I am. Like, my outward like body does not reflect my actual discipline. And partially, this is, like you said, the Man on a Mission group and the people that are motivated in like just pushing the limits of life, but also their health and wellness and everything. So anyways, all that being said, in this group in day 4, there's a coaching call, and you see just like person after person after person after person showing like, 30 days ago, here's what I looked like. Here's what I look like now. 60 days ago, here's what I looked like, and they're before and afters. And then you're seeing people that are like 50 and 60 years old going through these transformations. And I'm like, a roadmap that's like, literally eat this food, do this workout, and the next day, here's your plan. It's just like, I can
It just
follow
simplifies it.
instructions. Oh, yeah. Like, the amount of energy that I'm saving, because like, I want to eat whole foods, but you know how hard it is to wake up and be like, what should I eat today? And so I have a plan right now. I'm on this cleanse, and the food I'm eating is like the most boring, bland food ever. You get like grapefruit and hard boiled eggs, like no seasoning, nothing, for, a certain number of days. But because I'm disciplined, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to do it. It's just like a huge relief of like, I'm not even tempted by other things because I know what I'm supposed to eat today, and it's all pre-planned and everything. So anyways, I'm 4 days in, like I said, and probably more of an advocate than I should be, except for the fact that I see all these other like
Yeah.
testimonials, and it's just like the confidence of like, you're telling me that if I do these things for 3 months, I will look like that. Done. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So that's my
Seriously.
thought
Yeah.
process.
Sign me up. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, well, because I saw the transformation even in Dan Martell, because he posted about it. I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, where basically, like you, he'd been working out all of his life, and he still wasn't in the shape that he wanted to be in. And then he made that switch, and then he showed the after, and it was astonishing, the difference back and forth. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
a very discouraging thing to be working out like you in your position every single day, and to not have that, not have the result that you feel should have come from all of your hard work.
Well, I feel like it's a great analogy and microcosm of everything else in life and business is that you're it's not like I'm spending more energy than I was before. In fact, I would say I work out 5 times a week now, or will. That's the future. But like the Dan always says, lift the same, look the same. So if you want to look different and you've been doing the same thing for 5 years and it's not producing the results, you probably need to change something. And so I feel
Yeah.
like, uh, yeah, to me, it's just the idea of like in your business or whatever, there's people have already figured out most of the problems that we're going to encounter in business and life. And
Hmm.
the knowledge is you know, that's that's the, it can short circuit and just literally, turn the resistance out down on your life. Instead of pedaling at 90 resistance, you're all of a sudden pedaling at 10.
It's true, and achieving the same thing
Yeah.
or better. Sorry, achieving much better
Yeah,
in your case.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if you or anyone else is crazy enough and wants to take on the challenge of having a ridiculously bland diet for 3 months, I'm only 5 days ahead of you. So
Are you okay?
you could
I
jump on.
honestly might be interested in that because I I was talking again with my brother last night, and we are like, you know what? Like I've made this huge change in business, but as far as like the personal health, I haven't really done anything. And I remember my dad, and I'm only 27, so I feel like I have a ways before this is a thing. But I remember my dad, he had boys when he was, in his 20s, and then he also had, boys like children when he was in his 40s. He's 51 now, and his youngest boy is I think 8. And
Wow.
he would always tell me, is like, I want to do the same thing with your brothers when I'm in my 50s as I did with you. And you look at, I don't know about
Mm,
most, but a lot of men, and they aren't able to do that because they never prioritize their health. And so like looking at that, that's been like a big inspiration as well. It's like, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your loved ones either.
totally. No, I think that's, to me, that's the thing that is motivating is just like everybody can sit down. Like my thought process is, well, I'm going to actually ask you, we'll do this in real time. Who are the like 2 or 3 people? You don't need to say their names necessarily, but think about the 2 or 3 people that inspire you. So take a second, and people listening, you can do this as well. But like, who's someone that you just look up to? And generally, I feel like for most people, there's just like 2 names or 3 names. It's like immediately, like, oh, that person. You don't even need to know them. You could just be following them and observe them. But what are the qualities of those 2 or 3 people that you respect or admire? And now, a quick word from our sponsor, which is Boolean Review. Boolean is a review software that my wife and I own, and we sell this software to home service businesses. So I know there are many different people that listen to this podcast, but if you know someone, an electrician, an HVAC business, a painting company, maybe a coffee stand, someone that is providing service to customers and get found online by customers, we would love to talk to them. This is a review software that is the highest converting review software in the home service space in particular. And if you're wondering what that means, if you have 100 clients in your business, the typical business gets between 1 to 2% of those customers. So for every 100, they would get 1 person or 2 people to leave them a review on Google. Other review softwares get between 3 and 5%, and the Boolean review software gets 20% of your customers to leave you Google reviews. And these are fantastic Google reviews with lots of words, keywords that are going to help with SEO, pictures, stories, the names of your employees. So if you want to learn more, check out booleanreview.com. And now back to the episode.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, right off the bat, of course, my role model and my biggest inspiration since day one has been my dad. Um, it, yeah, ever since I was a little kid, I remember I always he's was also a contractor. I'm fourth generation contractor, so basically, from the day I was born, I lived and breathed construction and houses, and that's all I've ever known. And then more than that, like my dad was my inspiration with that. I always went to work with him, and we had this old 1990s stick shift white diesel truck. And I'd always sit in the middle with the big, those the big knob, yeah, right in between my legs, and they would always vibrate up against my leg. I remember when I was little. But I would go to work with him because I was homeschooled. I would work with him almost every single day. And then as I grew older, I would go to work with him and my grandpa, and I kind of was able to see his life a lot closer than I think a lot of children are able to see their dads, because I was able to work with him a lot. And he hasn't taken over the world like in a financial way, but in a whole different way. He's built a business that's sustainable, that has given him and his family the freedom to go to they moved from Eugene to Sandpoint, and they built a house up there debt free. And I have 13 siblings, and a big Catholic family, and he's my biggest inspiration because all of his children, even though he has that many, all of them feel like they're the only one, if that makes sense. Like he was able to give all of them the attention and love that they needed to thrive in the world. And then he's also, he built this big business, and at 51, he's basically starting again with a new business, and he's just as hungry as ever. So he's definitely my biggest inspiration for life. And if I was what he is at 50 when I turn 50, I would be honored. Um, and then, as far as business goes, I've got like I really look up to, not so much Grant Cardone now. I feel like he's turned into um, I don't know, very very Hollywoodized real estate, if that makes sense. Grant Cardone of like 10 years ago, I used to read all of his books, and I Seller Resold, 10X, all those books I think were awesome. What he is now, I feel like he's a little bit too Hollywoodized, um, very romanticized with real estate. But I really like Brandon Turner quite a bit. I've been listening to his podcast a lot and following him. I think he seems like he's taken over the world, but he also has maintained his good Christian values, and surrounded himself with good people. And I feel like a lot of people, when they get up to that level of elite, the people that they surround themselves with are not the greatest. And I really look up to the fact that all the people that he interviews in his podcast and he seems to surround himself with are like good quality men and women. And I think that's very honorable. And the things he's accomplished in business are nothing less than extraordinary.
So with those two people, your dad and Brandon Turner, and then Grant Cardone of 10 years ago,
Right.
what are the characteristics of those people? If you were to pick 3 to 5, just listing off like whatever those things are.
Okay, I think of my dad, the thing I look up to the most is his moral integrity. um, and that's what I aspire to be with my business, and then in life, of course. And then with Grant Cardone is his sheer tenacity, and the fact that he really doesn't give a damn about what people think. It's even now, he is who he is, and you either accept it and you love him, or you hate him and you move on. And then with Brandon Turner, honestly, his I think the thing I admire most about him is that he he has become, such a prominent, huge member of the real estate community, but I feel like he hasn't let that overtake him. Um, and and he kind of still is, acts like he lives a big life, of course. His houses here and in Hawaii and everything, but I feel like he has maintained his humble roots of where he started, and this just seems like such a humble, down to earth person, hasn't lost touch with who he used to be. And so I find that very admirable as well.
So those are, you're saying, humble, uh, rooted, tenacity, integrity. Uh, are those? Am I saying that correctly?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to summarize.
Okay, because what I would say is, again, for anyone else doing this, I was thinking about like you list those characteristics, and then the thing that I think is really interesting is to this, I don't know, I'm getting more and more passionate about so many of these aspects of life that if you would have asked me when I was in high school or college, I would have told you were crazy, or that it was like, oh, that's woo woo, like
Right.
you can't just like manifest stuff, you know. And so my current view or way I would describe this is like, okay, so you just listed characteristics of the people that you admire. The first thing is, have you ever, Matt Lachlan says this a lot, but the idea of you can only observe and acknowledge in others that which you have in yourself. Have you heard that before?
I've never, you know, it's funny. I've done so much coaching with Matt, and I've never heard that one before. But that's
So, and
actually, I really like that.
it's good and bad, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I can see integrity in somebody because I do have that inside of me. And I also can see someone that is not eating well or not healthy because I'm struggling with it, right? Like you
Right.
notice
Yeah.
the world, like there's so many things to notice in the world, and the reality is you end up noticing that which you are. As weird as that is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like buying a blue car, and then all of a sudden you see them everywhere.
Yeah,
Same kind of thing.
exactly. So like there's I was pulling up, this was the one that I was trying to pull this up on ChatGPT really quick. So Carl Jung, the psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, says everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Or another one from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, people do not seem to realize that their opinion of the world is also a confession of character. And there's many other people that have talked about this, but Nietzsche says, he who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster, and if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. That sounds like Jordan Peterson, but
It does. It's
um
a very complicated thing to say.
yeah. But the thing is, so like we're going through this, you observe these characteristics, and then the next part is like, the truth is you actually have all of those characteristics that you admire in others in yourself already. And then the next thing I would say is go through and you can, again, just because I think this is a fun exercise, if you listed someone that has, or if we're talking about this imaginary person that's like a compilation of these three people you admire, they have integrity, they're humble, they're rooted, and they're tenacious. What does someone with those characteristics, what does their daily life look like? And so, like, what time do you think someone like that? I'll try and give short answers, and I'll just spit out a bunch of questions to you right now. So,
Right.
what does someone's life like that look like? When do they wake up?
5 a.m. or
What type of
yeah,
workouts do they do?
type of workouts. Definitely not easy ones. They push the limits.
Not easy. Okay. And what are their
Yeah.
business goals? Or describe their business goals.
I would say their business goals would be, to most people, without not, outside of reach. I very lofty business goals.
And what types of books do you think they're reading? Or how many books do you think they read a year?
Probably a lot more than I do. They probably read at least one or two a month, I would imagine. Yeah.
And then it's like, I mean, you get the idea, but it's like you go through and like you start listing not so much
Hmm.
like who they are, but just tell me like what do they do? Like if you looked in their bedroom, what would their bedroom look like? You
Yeah. What are
know?
their actions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like are they making their bed? Of course, you know.
Hmm.
Do they work out every day? Yes. Do they have a family? Do they have a wife? Do they have kids? How many kids? Where do they go on vacation? Are they involved in their community? Like you just start listing all these things. And this is the other thing that I'm like, I've just gotten so pumped on this idea. And this is also tied into like my motivation with Dan Martell and his fitness thing. Is just like, everybody knows who they are and who they are going to be, or I should say, who they want to be. Everybody knows, and they
Right.
also know exactly what they need to do to get there. Like we
Hmm.
literally, all the answers are inside of you. You know, the like, in order for me to become the person that I want to be, which is the characteristics of the people that I admire, this is what that life looks like. And then in my mind, this is what I like, literally within the last month, I'm like, all right, why, like, again, pulling from my dad's early, death, or in
Hmm.
your 50s, it's like, what if I only live till I'm 50? What if I only live till I'm 40? I got 6 years left. Like, what the hell am I waiting for? I already know who I want to be, so it's got to start sometime. It might as well start now, and you can work backwards from that's who I want to be. This is what they do. Okay, do it.
Yeah. I think that's well, first of all, that's such an interesting, um, those are such interesting questions because it kind of, in a way, gives you a roadmap to be the person that you want to be, like you were saying, by asking, like, who do you admire? And then what do you admire about them? And what do you think they do every day? And it's like, well, in order to become that person, that's what I have to do. Um,
You got to start
so
doing it. Yeah.
yeah, gotta start doing it. Gotta
And
start
it's
working
like,
out,
do you
take care
think
of my
they
health.
care what other people think about them?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah,
Yeah. And I feel like it's like the most people can ask you these things. And I'm not saying like I'm like so early in this that I struggle with
right,
so many things, but it's like even me saying all this on the podcast is forcing me to own that even more than I would if I didn't. You know what I mean?
right,
Because
yeah,
we have all these thoughts inside of us. And as soon as we start talking about it, we're actually moving closer to it just by talking,
it's
it's
true.
like sitting
Yeah,
on it it kind of rots inside of you.
yeah, it's your own call to action in a way.
Yeah. Um, anyways. Yeah. So, where, where else do we go from here? What
Like,
else
what's
is on your
my
mind?
my goal in the next, like, out there for business, or where are we going with that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking like, so you're going to do 70 to 75 homes this year.
Mm-hmm.
um what's the like what else have you learned in this pursuit of this impossible goal, um and how is that like what other like I guess I want to take this back to someone listening right now has an inkling or an urge or a feeling to do more, achieve more, grow a bigger business, be a better spouse, be a better parent, or whatever. Like, what are the other things that you've learned in this? You're in the midst of it, but you've got to already like say, here's what I would have told myself, back in 2022 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I would have told myself in 2022 is to, sounds cheesy, but to give myself permission to dream big and to take action with those dreams. Because I think a lot of people, kind of like going back to what you were saying about the health, a lot of people say, yeah, I'm going to get healthy, but then they go to fast food because they're going to get healthy tomorrow. It's always tomorrow is always the best day to start something. Today never is. It's always easier just to say you'll do it tomorrow. And so I think for me, what I would tell myself in 2022 is to, well, today is the best day to start. You know, like you can never accomplish anything if you don't start now, and even if you mess it up for the first, at my age, let's say 2022, I'm 27 now, I was 25 in 2022. That's something I love about Gary Vaynerchuk. He's like, you can mess it up and do things wrong for 15, 20 years. And when you're 40, 50 years old, you still got 20, 30 years left of life, at least, to do it right. Like you're still young, even after working and messing it up for so long. So why not start?
Yeah.
Why not do something? Like, who cares if you do it wrong? It's better. I think it's better to start and do it incorrectly than to just have never done anything at all.
Yep. I love that. Now, I think there's Gary V is another one that I started following probably 10 years ago. And he even jokes that I love this about him that he's like, I hope that you don't follow me forever because I just say the same damn thing over and
Yes.
over and over again. Like you don't need like if you haven't heard it, you're gonna enjoy it for a while, and
Yes.
then you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna go do something. It's like you don't need to keep hearing him say the same thing, but that's what he does. He just says the
It's
same
so
thing.
true. Yeah, I followed him on Instagram for 5 or 6 years, and then I think I actually unfollowed him because it got so annoying. Because it was like same thing, broken record every single day. But that's his thing. Is he truly does inspire
Patience.
people to, yes, patience. I remember he would talk to a lot of college kids about that who would just be frustrated with the fact that their life hasn't gone the way that they thought it would. And he's like, dude, you're a child. Like, you haven't even started yet.
Yeah, totally. And I love the idea or just the reframing of, um, like you said, the it's better to like do something and do it wrong than never start. And I feel like that's so many people are paralyzed by, and I mean, and again, like, it's so funny when you start thinking about why, when I say so many people are paralyzed, what you should really be asking yourself is, where am I paralyzed? Because the only reason I can notice that about someone is because I'm doing that same thing. So that is just like an awesome reflection to be like, anytime that you're pissed off, annoyed, frustrated, whatever, just take a second and say, where am I doing the same thing in my own life? And you're going to be like, oh,
Yeah, because like
it's a
for
brutal
me,
awakening.
it's yeah, for me it's definitely health and fitness is where I'm paralyzed because I can look back, 2 3 years ago, where I was honestly just ripped out of my mind. Like I was working out 2 or 3 hours every single day, and I was 23. So when you're 23, it honestly doesn't matter what you eat. So if you have good genetics and work out a lot, you're gonna be ripped. And so looking back on that, and I'm like, oh, and then looking at what I am now, it's so frustrating and discouraging. And so I think that's one of the ways I'm paralyzed is because I feel like I have such a long ways to go to be where I want to be that it's kind of just it almost like instead of being motivating, it kind of just stifles the motivation to take action because it feels like there's such a hard climb to get back up to where you were.
I feel like another thing that's right in line with this is, there's a saying, the best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time to start is now. And, but
I
it's
hear that
like,
in real estate every day.
yeah, exactly. And there's the other thing is that I feel that people, or another framing is like, the thing that you want to start doing, like for you, flipping houses, like, and you might do it poorly for, the
Hmm.
first 10 or whatever, but it's like, how excited would your future self be, and how proud of yourself would your future self be if you just started, like, doing that thing terribly today, you know?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
exactly.
Like the like, honestly, this podcast, I started like 5 or 6 years ago, and the first 5 episodes were excruciatingly hard. It was embarrassing to like ask the first person to like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast that doesn't exist yet that I think I want to do? And then it would, and then but now I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that I started that. And now I've done like 150 or 60 episodes, and now and I keep getting better and more comfortable, and just like building the systems so that I don't have to do any of the part of podcasting that I hate, which is the editing and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But it's
Right.
like, uh that's a piece for me, that like, there's other things that I know I want to do that I haven't done or haven't started. But it's like, okay, if myself 5 years from now was telling me, well, like, hey, I'm really proud that you did this in 2024, that you started this and you stuck with it, what would those things be? Because it's like the pessimistic view of like, oh, I should have started this before. It's like, okay, well, let's go to the future, and what would you be excited that you started now?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
um
No, that
yeah, go
definitely.
ahead.
I was gonna say like that whole that whole idea there is for me, it would definitely be in 5 10 years. I think honestly, taking charge of my health would probably make me prouder in 10 years than anything I would have accomplished in business. Because I honestly, I wonder, I think that's a harder thing to accomplish than it is. It must be because here I am, you know, taking charge with the business and 10xing it, but I still haven't done anything with my health. So that must be harder. That must be
Right.
the
Well,
the
and
harder
it's
dragon to
funny.
slay. Is
It's funny what is harder, because people look at what you're doing with flipping and they would say that's impossible.
right. Yeah, that's very true. But I think the thing I struggle the most with it would be, I think it is health. Honestly, I think health is harder for me.
So what are
Yeah,
you going to do about that?
I better fix it. I better get to work.
um
Maybe play less golf and spend more time in the gym.
so you have also, I think this will be the last little thing that we wrap up with here, but I do want to get a little snippet from you on your social media and just being, like, becoming known in your field. What have you learned in that regard? And like, I don't know, I feel like, Instagram we can use as an example.
Hmm.
uh what, like, yeah, how have you leveraged that, and what have you learned? Because I followed for, I mean, this is why I reached out to you for this podcast, is that I would see these houses that you're buying, and I'm like, I have no interest in flipping houses. I mean, I kind of do after seeing as much content as you put out, but it was like watching like these brief 30 to 60-second like episodes of like, oh my gosh, that is the worst hoarder I've ever seen. And then you're like, check out this bad decision that I made or whatever. So
Right. Yeah.
tell me about that journey.
Well, I started my Instagram I think in 2019, back when I was still working for my old boss. And I think leveraging that, and I built it out of, he encouraged me to build it because he saw the potential in social media. And at the time, I was just fooling around. So, but I took that to heart and I started building my Instagram, building it up. And I would say, what's funny is I think social media in the last like year has definitely helped my growth, but what has what has really kind of made myself known is honestly just like the person to person hanging out, getting coffee, playing golf, like making phone calls, running into each other, joining groups, networking. I think that has made the biggest impact on my business. And I used to really, really lean on social media and use that as almost like a reason to not go out and physically shake hands and meet people. But out now in 2024, I do have like the name, I suppose, of being like one of the bigger flippers in the area. And I don't think Instagram would have built that for me. um,
Mm,
like when most people think of, like most people in the wholesaling or like house flipping industry, when they get a house and they're like, who should I sell this to? I'm the name that they think of. And I think it's more so because of my, old school networking that I've done this year, which I've done more than I've ever done before, rather than my Instagram. I think the Instagram is a great, you make the connection over social media, because I think most people have found me over social media, and then that connection becomes much stronger by taking it into person. So I think, like for instance, my one of my biggest investors, I met at a meetup here in Coeur d'Alene. Another one I met at a networking group in Coeur d'Alene. Another one I go to church with. Like, and none of those people found me over social media, but now that once they met me, then it's like that daily repetitious action of, like you were saying, the houses. Like, you didn't meet me over social media, but you met me in the man on a mission. But without social media, you would probably never know the things that I'm doing every day. And so I think having that daily reminder of people to see what you're doing, even if it's just, because I don't post nearly as much as I should, but I do post on my stories fairly almost every single day. And so I think people seeing that daily repetitious action of like, oh, Tim is doing this, Tim's flipping this, Tim's going through this house, it makes you top of mind. And then just, but I do think physical networking, which is a lot harder than just posting on social media, has definitely been like the biggest, the sharpest arrow in my quiver this year for sure.
yeah, I've heard someone say with AI and video like reproduction capabilities and just deep fakes and all that stuff. Um, Someone recently, I can't remember who it was just talking about how the value of the stories, like that idea of social media, just like the raw, like, hey, check out where I am. um like, it's super easy for someone to look like they've made it and like do a photo shoot in a private jet, right?
Right.
But
Yes.
or say that you're like doing all this business stuff and like post a video. It's like, okay, like, that's not hard. But what's really like the value of like those stories is just like when you are showing every single day, this is this thing, this is this thing, here I am doing this, here I am doing this. Like, you start to like build a level of trust and what's the word, the reputation or brand of that thing, because it's like not like, for example, the private jet. Like if you literally were like posting videos of you traveling on your jet every day, that's far different than you having some really sick photos that you're posting on your page from like these epic trips. You know what I mean?
That's very true. Yeah, it's kind of like those, like the influencers that'll rent a Lamborghini for the day and then take pictures in it, versus the guy who you see in his stories driving it every single day. Is a very different, very different thing. Yeah, so I think that's very true.
Yeah. So last couple questions I have for you here. I always ask for 3 book recommendations, a movie suggestion, and then your preferred method of contact. So we'll start with the 3 book recommendations.
Okay. Well, shoot, I I will say I don't read nearly as much as I should. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and then I listen to audiobooks. Say my favorite book of this year is actually not even a business book, but I really liked Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I really liked that book quite a bit, especially when it's over Audible because it's Matthew McConaughey's voice narrating his life. So it's very interesting. But then I think my favorite business book has actually got to be a Grant Cardone book. It's called Sell or Be Sold. Um, a really interesting premise to the book basically is at any point in your life, you're either selling someone or you're being sold to, no matter what you're doing, whether you're with your kid or you're out, in business or whatever you're doing. Someone is either selling you an idea or a product, or you're doing the same. And so I thought that was a really interesting book. And then trying to think of a third book I liked. I'm working my way through Dan Martell's book right now. It's
Buy
a
back
bit
your
of a
time.
slow, yeah, it's a bit of a slow read. I think I'm about halfway through with it, but I really like that book, and I really like how he. That's kind of been my one of my inspirations for the year is that entire idea of buying back your time, of uh, finding the people to not make it so you can retire, but make it so where you can tackle larger things, which I think is very, yeah. So that I think those three would be my favorite books for this year.
And what's a movie suggestion?
Favorite movie of all time. It's been I watch it. I try not to watch it that often because it would dilute how awesome it is. But Last Samurai is definitely my favorite movie. I think that's Tom Cruise's the pinnacle of his career was that movie.
I haven't
Definitely.
watched that in a very, very long time. I need to
I,
put that back on the
yeah.
list.
I watched it like a month ago and for the first time in probably honestly 5 years, and it was like I was watching it for the first time because it had been so long.
Mm. And what's your preferred method of contact if someone wants to get in touch?
I say Instagram is probably the easiest. If you just send me a DM, I usually respond to those fairly quick or within a reasonable amount of time. The nice thing about DMs is if you don't respond to it immediately, people understand. Whereas if you send a text, they're like wondering if you died. Um,
Right.
so I, yeah, the real Tim Waggoner on Instagram is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Is um, the real Tim Waggoner? I will put that and then your well, I guess you don't really have a website. That's like your main
No,
way of
I
showing what you're
yeah,
doing.
exactly. I have a website, but it's like thrown together and doesn't make any sense and doesn't actually showcase anything of what I do.
Yeah.
It was just this free website that came with the software that I bought. So it's so definitely the real Tim Wagner is the way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, Tim, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this and sharing your knowledge, and then also just being an inspiration to I know me and other people in the group. But I remember before I actually talked to you, several people had told me like, you know, Tim, oh, he's the guy that's going to flip 100 houses, and I was like, wait, who's that? Because they're anyways. But yeah, it was fun conversation, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes, the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show, and also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.